Hey guys, welcome back to Outdoors Anonymous. Today we're going to be going over 5 quick tips to get you started on calling in more coyotes successfully. We're going to start with number 1, which is your call placement from your stand. So this one is a very dependent question, and I say that because it really depends on the type of terrain that you're hunting in and how you have your stand set up. It also depends on the wind direction too. So usually when I'm hunting an open field, my stand is usually placed like right at the bush line, right at the tree line, sometimes even a little bit within the tree line. So an open field like that, and I'm expecting the coyotes to come in from say more than 800 meters to up to a kilometer away from another tree line, then I'm going to be placing my stand anywhere between 50 meters away from me to up to 100 meters away from me. But if you're hunting, a smaller area and the coyotes you're expecting to come in from aren't that far away, say within 200, 300 meters, then you're probably going to be okay with placing your stand a little bit closer, like 20 to 30 meters away, something like that. And by the way, I'm talking about when you're using an e-collar like this with a remote, and I'll show you guys later on in this video as well what call sequences I'm using that have had some pretty good success for me doing my coyote hunts. Alright, so now that we know how far away to place the collar from our stand, you're all set up in your stand right now and you're ready to start calling. Now we're going to move on to tip number 2. Moving on, we're going to get to tip number 2, and that is call volume. Super important is the call volume. When I first started, I was blasting my volume. I had my volume up to like 20, and I was blasting rabbit in distress at a really high volume. Yeah, I was able to call a coyote in even that first time. Later on, I was told and taught that I should start my volume really low. An injured rabbit isn't going to be that loud, and also, coyotes have a really good sense of hearing too. So even if you start off, I'm starting off at like volume 7, 8, up to 10 right now is where I start off. And that's when I'm expecting the coyotes to come in from like 800 meters to a kilometer away, right? So you don't have to start off super loud. Turn it up as you go, depending if they're responding or not. But I usually never go past like 15 now. And so that's a tip for call volume. Keep that in mind. Alright, so tip number 2, that's all done. Volume's all good. You're ready to start calling in some coyotes. Before we move on to what calls to use and what sequence, we're going to first go over how long you should keep each call or each call sequence. So what I do personally is I run each call for 2 to 3 minutes, and then I pause, and then I stop it, and it's just dead silence, and I'm just listening or waiting for a response for 5 minutes. So that I call that one set. So 2 to 3 minutes on the call, pause for 5 minutes, that's one set. If I don't get it, usually they'll come in on that very first set. If you're in a good spot where there's actual coyotes, they're going to come in right on that first set. So if I'm running a prey in distress, then I run that for 2 to 3 minutes, and then pause for 5 minutes. It's a little bit different if I'm running Coyote Vocals. So say I'm running like a lone howl or something like that, trying to get a response from a coyote. I'm not going to run a howl for 2 to 3 minutes. That's not the same. I would be running that howl, and I'd let it howl maybe 5 times, and then I would just cut it. That would be the whole set for that howl. I might run it again a second time after 5 minutes, but 5 howls. So that's like, I don't know, might be 10-20 seconds if you're running a howl, and then you either cut it and stop it and move on to prey distress, or you can run it again after 5 minutes and run another set of howls. Alright, so now that we know how long to run each set, the next logical question would be how long to run your entire sequence. Basically how long you're going to be staying at that stand. And I know that's sort of getting into more of the stand tips, but on to tip number 4. How long to stay at the stand and how long to run your complete sequence. And we're sort of getting into stand tips here, but what you want to do is you don't want to stay at a stand for longer than 20, absolute maximum 30 minutes. If you don't have any response from any coyotes coming in or any coyotes howling back at you within 20 to 30 minutes, I would suggest to move on to the next stand. They're probably not going to be coming in. The very first time I went, I called in a coyote within like the first 3 minutes, within the first set of calls. He came in, I missed the shot, and then I stayed at that same stand for like 2-3 hours trying to call him back. That's not going to happen, and I ended up just wasting my time at that stand. Went over to the next stand and was able to get a coyote there within literally 10 minutes, which was basically that first one or two set of calls that I was using on that second stand. You don't want to stay at a stand for any longer than 20 to 30 minutes. I'll probably only stay at a stand for 20 minutes at a time now. You'll get a response within that time, and if you don't, it's time to move on to a different stand. All right, guys, so far we've gone over how far to place your caller from your stand, which was tip number 1. Tip number 2 was the call volume. Tip number 3 was your how long to run a set, and tip number 4 was how long to run the complete sequence and how long to stay at a single stand. We're going to move on to tip number 5, and that is what calls to actually use to be able to have better success in calling in coyotes. So I'm going to give you guys my best sequence that has been working for me, and I'll play the calls for you as well so you guys know what the call sounds like. If you don't have the exact same caller, it might be called something different on the e-caller that you use, so just play a similar sound as what you hear from mine. So all right, it's connected now, so I'm gonna actually, because I'm just at my house and I've got neighbors here, I'm gonna turn the volume down to just 1. You guys should still be able to hear it on the camera, but I don't want to freak anybody out. So I basically only use like 3 to 5 key calls on my sets, and those have been producing for me. So if something isn't broken, why try to fix it? But the main one that you want to start off with is this cottontail. You guys can see there, some sort of prey in distress. So depending on where you are, depending on what type of prey animal exists in the area that you're hunting, that's the kind of prey in distress that you want to call out. I tend to hunt like open fields, like farmers' fields and stuff like that with bush line. There's a lot of rabbits, cottontail rabbits, jackrabbits, woodpeckers. So I have cottontail, I have rabbit in distress, I've got woodpecker in distress set as my first couple memory buttons over here on the side. And then on this one I have long howl, and then this one I have pup in distress. And I'll go over each one with you guys, and I'll explain why I use and when I use each one. So tip number 5, what calls to use? Item number 1. I always start off with prey in distress. So in my case, I tend to start off with cottontail in distress. And I'll play that for you guys right now. So that's cottontail in distress. You'll see in this upcoming clip that I'm going to cut in here as well, you'll see that call in action. He's coming.
Either way, you got good footage of him. It's been recording the whole time.
That is at 200. He's standing there. Smoke him.
Got him.
That was a hit. That didn't take long.
This one right here is called the lucky pecker, and basically that's a woodpecker in distress. We have a lot of woodpeckers in the area that I hunt here, so I use this one sometimes as well. Usually though, my silver bullet has been cottontail in distress, so that's the one I would recommend because there's rabbits pretty much everywhere. So that'll probably work for you guys as well. Now, the reason why I always start out with prey in distress, sometimes people start out with like a lone howl or a challenge howl or something like that, or some sort of coyote vocals. I won't start off typically with coyote vocals. And the reason being for that, as I was told by somebody that's a professional coyote hunter, is that if there is, like, say, cats, like a bobcat or something like that, I don't know if you guys have that in your area, but if you do have that in your area, that's even more reason for you guys not to start off with coyote vocals. If you start off with coyote vocals and there's a bobcat in the woods nearby, well, you're just going to scare that thing off. Whereas if you would have started with prey in distress, you might have been able to call that cat out, and you might have been able to get yourself a cat. So that's the reason why I always start out with prey in distress, because you'd be able to call out any predator, right? A fox might come out. You might call out a fox first. Whereas if you started with a coyote vocals, you'd scare off that cat, you'd scare off foxes, you'd scare off any other type of predators in the area, because you're just going to freak them out. So always start off, especially as a beginner, I would recommend you always start off with prey in distress. All right, so the next call we're going to go over is some howls. So like I mentioned earlier, when I'm running a howl, I'm only running that particular howl a few times. So it's not about the time limit. It's just, is it going to howl 3 times, 5 times, 10 times? You only run that howl for a few times, and then you stop. Coyotes don't sit there and howl for 10 minutes straight. And it's going to sound super fake and obvious that it's not a real coyote if you're running a howl for like straight 10 minutes. So just run the howl a couple times and then let it pause, and then see if you get any response back, whether they howl or whether they come in to check it out. See if you get any response for that. The howl that I was using there is the pair howl. But you can use interrogation howl, you can use a female in heat howl, or whatever different kind of howls that you want to use. Challenge howl, all that kind of stuff. You can use any of that and see what works and gets you the response. We're just pretty much just going over the basics. So that is another call that I use, is the howl. So prey in distress, depending on what prey species you have, then you got the howl. And the third main type of call that I use is pup in distress. So the particular one that I'm using is called pup pillage, but you can play whatever they're called in the caller that you're using. If it sounds similar to that, basically you want to make it sound like there is a pup that is being attacked by some sort of predator. And what that's going to do is it's going to invoke on the maternal and paternal instincts of the animals, and they're going to come in and try to rescue that pup. I tend to only use that pup in distress after I've shot a coyote. So when I call them in from the prey in distress or from a howl, and I call them in, sometimes you call in multiple coyotes at the same time, and then one of them is going to be hanging farther back and the other one's going to come charging in at your decoy here. And say you shoot the one that's closer and he's down. Well, the next thing you want to do is now you want to play that pup in distress to make it sound like that coyote is in distress. Sometimes the other one that you called in, and sometimes you might not have even seen that you called in multiple coyotes and they might be hiding in the bush line. If you stop calling right there, right, then you'll never get those other ones. But if you put on pup in distress, sometimes those other coyotes will either come in closer or at least pause and stand there and look at you or try to figure out what's going on. And then that'll give you another opportunity to get multiple coyotes on one set. So always play pup in distress or some sort of coyote in distress. Pup in distress works the best for me, but always play that after you've already shot one coyote from your set. Alright guys, so we're going to end it with that for coyote calling tips for beginners here. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this video. Please keep in mind that this is a series that I'm doing. This is the second video of this series, so check out the playlist in the description down below if you haven't seen the first one yet, which is I'm going over all the different types of gear. from, you know, just starting out to intermediate to more advanced if you want to spend a little bit more money. Check out that video. That's going to be in the description down below. It should be in the, what do you call it, the card up here, the info card that pops up here as well. So click on that and check that video out, and stay tuned for future videos on this series for beginner coyote hunting 101. Again, keep in mind, I am not at all an expert whatsoever. I'm a fairly new hunter as well, and I just wanted to share my experiences so far with other people who are also just beginning or even just thinking about getting started in coyote hunting. So as you guys can see, if a beginner like me can get something like this done, you guys can do it too. So if you're thinking about getting into coyote hunting, give it a shot, check my video series out, and if this video has given you some sort of value, please smash that like button. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button as well, and that bell notification icon so you can be notified when I put out some future content. Again, thank you so much for watching, and in the next video, we're going to be talking about where to find land to be able to hunt coyotes and how to place your stand. So be sure to subscribe, save this playlist, and stay tuned for that. See you guys in the next video. Peace!